There are things out there, creatures, monsters, ghouls, and spirits, beings that fall outside the realm of visible truth, beyond the confines of our basic reality. They lurk in the dark, haunt the recesses of our minds, and stir our curiosity in the unusual and weird. They are taboo topics, stories that we tell around the campfire and folklore passed down from our ancestors. We've been taught that these things don't exist, that they are merely myth and legend. Or are they? Welcome to the Occult Archives. I'm your host and spooky librarian, E.M. Moon, but feel free to refer to me as E. Here lies a space beyond all spaces, a library full of arcane information enough to drive any normal person mad. If you can think of it, if you can question it, the archives probably have what you seek. Subject number 001, Violet Eve. I had managed to get away and took up hiding inside Brigid's Dawn. In a dream, there are no locked doors, so I was able to sneak in and squirrel myself away in one of the back rooms of the shop. As glad as I was that Naomi made it out of this nightmare, I had sadly been left behind and had no idea whatsoever on how to escape. I could hear the hag sloppily scooting around the streets looking for me, but I had managed to stay hidden for what seemed like hours. I tried not to breathe too heavily. I tried not to move at all. If she found me again, I was done for. Even though I could easily manipulate the world around me, I guess that was sort of limited to the waking world. In the dream world, I was merely nothing but a pawn in Naomi's nightmare. Why on earth was she dreaming about any of this to begin with? She knew about as much as I did in regards to what was going on. So who, or what, had brought her here? The slurping noise sounded again just outside the front of the shop. I was surprised she hadn't come this close before. The bulbous hag was going to open those doors and slither around like a slug till she found my hiding place in one of the terror rooms. I wasn't going to be able to fight her off. I wasn't going to be able to do much of anything considering her size, and the fact that this dream state had left me all but powerless. Then I heard the wind chimes above the front door of the shop, followed by the slimy sound of the hag slithering her way inside. I had the urge to scream, but I clamped my hand hard over my mouth to keep myself quiet.
You'll do, little demon, even if you aren't the one I'm after.
The hag spoke as I could hear her ambling about the shelves in the shop as she hunted for me. I was no demon, at least not in her sense of the word, and I wasn't going to let her take me by surprise. I could now hear her on the far end of the store and took that as my cue to look for a back exit. I scuttled about on the floor, feeling my way through the dark for some sort of handle or knob to the outside.
They shouldn't have done it. They shouldn't have felled my tree. Had they just left well enough alone, this wouldn't have happened.
The hag echoed through the vacant shop as I finally found the door I was looking for. With a quickness, I turned the knob and shoved the door outward, fleeing as the gelatinous creature finally found me. She grasped at me with pudgy fingers, but even in the dream world, I was too fast for her. Where was I going to hide now, though? How far could I run in this dream? There was a possibility I could leave the city, the state even. I ran the length of the shops till I found an alleyway and brought myself out to the main street where the witch's brew stood, its mockery of the burning time still standing proudly. But the pyre was in the street now, right in the middle instead of being on the sidewalk. I wonder what they're going to do with this. I spoke aloud, but tried not to waste too much time lest the hag finally discover me.
There you are.
Something gurgled behind me, and I spun around to see the creature standing in the middle of the street. I was frozen and not able to decide which direction I should go. But before I even had a chance to, Naomi appeared between us, her back to me. "Take a fucking hike, Batibot. You look like you could use it," she cursed at the hag. The Batibot opened her toothless mouth and wailed like a banshee into the night as her body was pushed far away from us. "Close your eyes, Violet. It's time to wake up." Naomi spun around to face me, pulled me in close, and wrapped her arms around my shoulders. I squished my eyes shut and held my breath as I waited for myself to be back in her bed, awake and unscathed. I held her tightly, making sure that both of us would get out this time. The Batibot snarled a second time in the distance, but the screeching was cut short. I opened my eyes to a pillow in my face. Brushing it aside, I let go of Naomi as the two of us sat up in the bed, and I immediately decided to stand. Thank God! Cassandra heaved a sigh of relief and pulled Naomi to her to make sure she was all right. The only other person in the room was Adam, and when our eyes met, he yanked me to him, cradling my head against his chest. Please, please try not to do that again. I know you want to help everyone, but you have had way too many close calls for my liking. He stroked my hair as he spoke. I was so relieved to be out of there that I returned the gesture and gripped him tight, trying to anchor myself to the waking world. Salome, Kane, and Henri rushed into the room then, glad to finally see that we were all awake and in good condition. Was it a batibat? Henri asked, coming over to check on Naomi himself. I guess so, but I didn't ask. Naomi pursed her lips, and I swore I saw Henri blush. What is a batibat? I questioned. It seemed like I was the only one who didn't know what they were talking about. It's a Filipino demon. That's what we think attacked you both. Adam looked down at me with those eyes, and I swallowed hard. Great. We have now stepped outside the bounds of monotheism. I replied sarcastically. But what the hell was a Filipino demon doing in Salem? I know what you're thinking, and we have no idea why a demon like that is roaming around the Northeast. Adam had read my mind. Salome was now by my side, scanning me up and down like my mom did when I fell out of the tree I loved to climb as a child. I assured her that I was fine, but she pulled me away from Adam to get a better look. We have to get rid of this thing. It's connected to me somehow, though I just don't understand why it came after me or why I had a dream about it in the first place. Naomi sat down in a chair and began to think. These powers are unpredictable. It may be that you have a sensitivity to these sorts of things. The Batibat is technically a dream demon, Henri explained to her. Maybe, but I'm exhausted and don't want to talk about it anymore tonight, nor do I want to go back to sleep. Naomi still looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. Come back to the hotel with us. At least that way we can all keep an eye on you. Cassandra invited her into the already crowded room that we were occupying at the Hawthorne Hotel. I wouldn't want to impose. Naomi threw her a wistful glance, and I could have sworn that there was more said silently than aloud. No imposition at all. You can even bring Druid. Cassandra slipped in next to Naomi and stroked her hair softly. I must have been making a funny face because Adam leaned into me and whispered, "They were an item once." Things started to make sense. I didn't know the details, but I wasn't going to ask at the moment. I was afraid to go to sleep myself at this point, but there was no way I was going to be able to stay awake. As Naomi packed herself a bag and lured her cat Druid into a carrier, Adam led me out into the living room while everyone else followed. I just wanted this day to be over, but I hadn't realized that the sun would be up in less than an hour. Adam threw his arm around my shoulder and led me out of the apartment before speaking. Don't worry. I won't let you fall asleep if you don't want to. I don't want to. But if we are going to get rid of this Batibat, I'm going to need some rest. I hung my head and propped myself against Adam's broad frame. Then I'll stay with you if it makes it easier, he responded. It would. It would definitely make it easier. I didn't want to sleep in a bed next to Cassandra anyway. Subject name, Adam Bodine. I stayed up as long as I could, watching Violet sleep curled up next to me. Henri had grumpily taken the far side of the bed with me smushed in between them. I wasn't going to let her slip into a nightmare again for fear that we wouldn't be able to get her out next time. I finally passed out just as the sun was peeking up from the horizon, and I woke a few hours later to an empty room, save for Violet. She was sitting between the beds, her laptop out and headphones in, typing away on the keyboard. I tried to be as casual as I could when I climbed out of bed and gave her slight acknowledgement as I wandered to the bathroom to get myself a shower and try to wipe the rest of the sleep from my eyes. It's like a fucking sauna in here. Violet had one earbud popped out of her ear when I stepped out of the shower, only a towel draped around my bottom half to leave a little to the imagination. Ever doused a campfire with cold water? It's something like that. I shook the last bit of moisture from my forearms and went to get some fresh clothing from my duffel bag.
Makes sense.
Violet was watching me as I threw a shirt over my head, and I wiggled my finger for her to turn around so she didn't have to see me put my pants on. Where is everyone? I spoke to the back of her head as I slid my pants over my legs and quickly laced on my boots.
They went back to Brigid's Dawn with Naomi. She had to work and they didn't want her to be alone. I think Henri sent Salome and Kane on a mission to see if they could find out more about the trees in Proctor's Ledge, while he tried to figure out who cut down the tree and why.
Violet went back to typing on the computer. And what are you doing? I sat on the bed next to her and tried to see what was on her screen.
I am trying to find out where the clinic for Elcipher Labs was located here in Salem. It is literally like it fell off the face of the earth. They all did.
Violet spoke, clicking on a link to a local paranormal forum. Nobody wants us to know. Whoever created us doesn't want us to know. That's the way it seemed to me, at least.
I'll find it. They may have tried to erase their existence, but people do talk on the internet. Somewhere, someone knows something.
Violet slowed her speech.
Look at this.
She turned the computer screen around so I could see the forum page. Violet tapped on a specific post, and I read it out loud. For those of you asking about the old fertility clinic, it isn't haunted. I know there are stories about illegal medical testing and human experimentation, but that is all bullcrap. The clinic was never used for anything but what they stated: reproductive biology and fertility. Many people went to them for help and achieved success. The clinic still stands, but it is now a tattoo shop on Boston Street. That's why no one can find it, because the stories say that it was located just outside of the city. It is indeed right there in the heart of Salem, but it is just a building housing a different business. For those of you that already know this and continue to call the business and harass them, shame on you.
We know where the clinic is now.
A sly smile crept across Violet's face. But what good does that do us since it is now a tattoo shop? I saw where she was going, but it looked like just another dead end.
Maybe there was something left behind. Sometimes when businesses just up and leave or facilities close down, they leave everything behind because there's no time to take it with them. I've read articles about abandoned psychiatric facilities that had to be shut down, and all the patients' medical files were just left in the building, along with personal items, medications, hospital equipment. It's actually quite eerie.
Violet pointed out. Good point, Vi. You want to go check it out, don't you? I knew where this was headed.
Actually, I was thinking of getting a new tattoo. Of course I want to go check it out.
Violet looked at me as if I were stupid. You can't expect me to help you if you can't say anything nice. I joked with her, letting her dangle a bit.
It's called sarcasm, and this is me being nice.
Violet stood up and faced me. We were both about the same height with me sitting down, and I had to fight back the laughter. Let's go see what everyone else is doing first, and then we can make an excuse to detour from the group and go explore. I now stood up myself, so Violet had to look up at me.
Fine.
Violet pouted, but I could tell that she found it just as amusing. I would rather be doing this instead of letting Violet get wrapped up in another dangerous situation anyway.
Look who's awake.
Cassandra greeted us as we walked through the door of Brigid's Dawn. Awake and ready to get to work. I tried to sound eager.
Henri just called a little bit ago and said he was up at the police station, asking about the trees. He assumed that someone would have reported a tree being cut down from a protected historical site. He was waiting to speak with someone when Salome beeped through and told me that they were at the library, asking about the trees that grow at Proctor's Ledge.
Cassandra gave us the rundown of the day's activities, as Violet went to speak with Naomi.
I like that necklace.
Violet pointed at the wooden medallion that dangled from Naomi's neck, as Cassandra filled me in on the day so far. I would like it more if it didn't represent what it does. Naomi thumbed it before looping it over her head for Violet to get a better look. What does it represent? I asked, coming over to look at it myself. I had no idea why she would be wearing something she didn't agree with.
It's a token from that bar down the street. I guess they had them made to advertise for the pub and its grand opening. They must have been passing them around and my boss left me a pile to give out. I like the aesthetic of it, but not the message the pub gives out. We are not a mockery. Naomi seemed really disgruntled over the whole thing. You're right. Things like that shouldn't be a joke, but sadly it makes money. Want me to take the rest of these and we can just pretend that you handed them out? I threw her a sly grin and she scooted the box of identical necklaces over to me. Violet snagged one from the container and stuffed it in her bag before I emptied the rest into the pocket of my cargo jacket. Kane and Salome had to take one because my boss was watching when they came in, and I had to look like I was doing my job. But that is 25 less of those things floating around out there. Naomi sighed as the wind chime tinkled above the door and a group of women entered, all dressed in black. I took this as our opportunity to get out of there and went to speak with Cassandra as Violet wandered around somewhere over near the tarot cards. You mind if Violet and I go out and maybe see what we can find? I figured her information gathering skills might be useful, and I promised to keep an eye on her. I presented the idea to Cassandra.
That's not a bad idea since things are rather lax right now. Keep your phones on in case I need to call. We can't have anything happen to you either.
Cassandra's eyes flitted to mine for a second and she smiled. Not a problem. I shrugged off the awkward eye contact and went to retrieve Violet from the light reading she was doing over in the book section. I got us the green light. Let's get over to that tattoo parlor and see what we can find. I whispered to her, plucking the book from her hands.
Don't ever take a book from someone who is reading it.
She glared at me, nudging me with her elbow before leading us both out of the shop. Subject name, Salome Vex.
Can I help you?
An elderly woman asked as Kane and I stood by the front desk of the library. Yeah. This may seem like a strange question, but we were wondering if someone could tell us anything about the trees that are in Proctor's Ledge. My partner has a travel blog, and she loves to write about the flora and fauna of the locations we go to, so... Kane was sweet to ask for me, but he was starting to ramble. I have always had an intense interest in the Salem witch trials, and I figured it would be cool to write a piece on them and the trees at the site. Everything has history, including the flora around us. I elaborated for the woman. I made sure to keep my sunglasses on so I didn't give the poor thing a heart attack.
Well, we do have an excellent arborist who just moved here a few months back. He came in a couple of weeks ago doing research on the plant life here in Salem, and I think he mentioned the hanged site as one of the places he was interested in. Such morbid curiosity about that place.
The old woman trailed off, tapping her chin.
Yeah, well,
could you possibly point us in his direction? I asked, hoping I could lure her back to the conversation.
His name is Armand Wright. You can usually find him at the coffee shop down the street.
The old lady pointed in the direction of the coffee house.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Have a good day.
I looped my arm in Kane's and steered him towards the exit of the library. Kane wanted a coffee something awful, so as he ordered the biggest one that the shop would allow, I asked another barista about this Almond Wright.
That's him over there in the corner. He's a bit of an eccentric type, but he seems nice enough.
She pointed him out, hidden behind a large laptop in the corner of the shop. I thanked her and waited patiently for Kane to get his coffee before going over to question the man.
Excuse me.
I mustered up the courage to speak, while Kane had his bearded face buried in his coffee cup. The man looked up from his laptop at me. He was not what I expected at all. I expected weird. Glasses, messy hair, pocket protector. But that wasn't even close. He looked like he wasn't a day over 35, with slick chocolate hair, yellow eyes, and a rather defined nose. Can I help you with something? He eyed me suspiciously as I stood there at a loss for words.
Are you Almond Wright?
I asked, making sure to keep my hands to myself lest I rot the table down to wood pulp. That's me. And you are? Almond seemed intrigued by my asking for him by name and waited for me to go on.
My name is Salome, and I was wondering if maybe you could help me out with something.
I slid into the seat in front of him, not giving him a chance to get rid of me easily.
I'm a blogger and wannabe botanist and love writing about the local foliage of the places I travel to, and I was told that you are the man to talk to about trees.
I really hoped he'd buy that. Oh, well, I am a little busy, but I guess I could take a break to talk to another fellow tree enthusiast. He closed his laptop and laced his hands in front of him. Great. I patted the chair next to me for Kane to sit down. I just wanted to know if you knew anything about the trees on Proctor's Ledge. I've always been interested in the history of Salem, and I figured that would be a great focal point for my next post. Proctor's Ledge has some beautiful trees, despite what they were used for so many years ago. The area was mostly comprised of hardwoods, and in 1747, many locust trees were planted as a memorial to those who died, though they were cut down some time ago. Almond took a photograph out of a manila envelope and let me take a look at it. I remembered what I had been told. There was a tree that wasn't nearly as old or as large as the others in the area, and that was the one I was looking for. I could see the oaks, a few hickories, and smack dab in the middle was a tree that could have been the one that Naomi saw. What kind of tree is this? I pointed at the smaller one in the midst of the larger trees. That is an acacia mangium. He tapped on the photo. It looks as if it hasn't been there as long as the others. I tried to lead our way into more information on that particular tree. It was still rather young compared to the others. Sadly, someone cut it down, but I was able to decipher an age on it, about 435 years old. Ahmed informed me. That was definitely our tree. But why would someone cut it down? I feigned disbelief. That's what the police here in Salem are trying to investigate. That is a historically protected site, and whoever did this is going to go to jail for a long time. Ahmed seemed mildly outraged at the cutting of such an old tree. As they should. I took out my phone and typed a few things in my notes. Thank you so much for talking to me about this. It was my pleasure. If you need anything else, you can either find me here or at the big celebration down on the square this evening. There will be drinks. He winked at me, and I thought I heard Kane growl in return. Thank you so much again. Maybe we will bump into each other tonight. I gave him a quick smile and cued Kane to finish his coffee so we could get back to Brigid's Dawn and let Cassandra know what we found out. Subject name, Naomi Starr.
That was Salome. They found a local arborist who gave them some information on the trees at Proctor's Ledge. She didn't want to go into detail on the phone, however. Cassandra spoke to me after 2 patrons left with a bag full of herbs. Anything from Henri? I asked, slipping cash into the register drawer. He just texted me and said that the police are investigating the cutting of the tree, but they don't have any leads or witnesses yet. It seemed like he had no leads either, but hopefully Salome had something useful. Where did Violet and Adam go? I wondered out loud. It had been over an hour since I had seen them. Violet is going to use some writer sleuthing to see what she can find. Adam is confident that she may be able to get us something useful. Cassandra returned. Adam may have been confident, but Cassandra didn't seem to think much of it from the tone of her voice. The chimes rang above the door again, and the tall, dark woman from the other evening came sidling in. Naomi. She gave me a lilting smile, and I returned it reluctantly. I just loved the crystals I bought from you yesterday and just had to come back for a reading. Are you available? I technically was, even though I was the only one working. Allison set up a table in the reading nook for me to do live readings, but I hated putting on a show. Things were slow, though, as the pub crawl was just getting going for the day, so I had to oblige. I am. I tossed Cassandra a look that I hoped she would understand. She just nodded and came over to stand by the front counter while I led Gabby over to the table. Please, take a seat. My rate is $20 for the first 30 minutes and then $30 for every half an hour after that. Sometimes readings can take a while. I hoped that this would be a quick one, however. Gabby sat in the seat across from me and tucked her expensive purse under the table. Is that your girlfriend? She asked, nodding her head in Cassandra's direction. No. Just a friend hanging out for the day. I fudged the answer on purpose. Why would she even ask me that? I took my deck out of its silk cloth and began shuffling the cards as I asked the woman. Do you have a specific question, or do you just want a general reading? Just general. I need a little insight.
Gabby had her fingers laced under her chin, just staring at me as she spoke. Right. Celtic cross spread? I usually gave my patrons more of an option, but I didn't want to sit here all day. She nodded, and I handed her the deck so she could cut it. I shuffled once more and began laying out cards in front of us. The first one I set on the table was the devil. Normally this wouldn't have made me bat an eye, but with the situation at hand. I finished laying out the rest of the spread and went on to elaborate on the cards for her, all the while that devil card looming in front of me.
You're very insightful, Naomi. Your third eye is wide open. Would you like to have drinks with me tonight?
That was a question I was not expecting. I think I have plans. Sure, I like girls just as much as the next person, but as beautiful as Gabby was, she made me feel off just by being in her presence.
Well, if things change, I will be at the big pyre burning tonight. Maybe we will run into one another.
She set a $50 bill down on the table and slipped out of her seat, not saying another word as she left the shop. I jumped from my chair with the money in hand and ran over to Cassandra. Does she give you the willies too?
She's a beautiful woman, but I feel it too. Something isn't right about her.
I couldn't tell if Cassandra actually agreed with me or if there was a slight tinge of jealousy in her voice. Then I will try my hardest to avoid her. I nodded as Salome and Kane entered the shop, followed closely by Henri.
What did you find?
Cassandra turned her attention to the others. Well, it seems that the tree you saw being cut down was a type of acacia called Acacia mangium. That was really all that he could tell us, though he did confirm that the tree wasn't as old as the others, maybe 435 years or so. He said we were more than welcome to seek him out tonight if we needed to talk more. Salome explained. He just wanted to see you again, so you could talk about stamens and pistils or whatever. Kane grunted. That's flowers, not trees, and he was being polite. Salome bit back. It seemed like jealousy was a bit of a thing right now.
And you, Henri? Anything else?
Cassandra questioned him next. Nothing. The police said it looked like someone just took an axe to it and drug it off, but there wasn't enough of a trail to follow. No leads, really. Henri seemed disappointed that he hadn't gotten much from his trip to the police station. I already had my phone out and was researching the type of tree that Salome had given us the name of. That type of acacia is native to Australia, Papua New Guinea, and Indonesia. It is commonly found in the Philippines, too. I think we are definitely dealing with a Batibat. I didn't want to admit it, but all signs pointed to yes. Why would someone just randomly plant a non-native tree in the middle of Northeast USA? And so long ago, for that matter, especially since Filipino immigration didn't really start booming till the later 1700s. Henri knew quite a bit about his cultural history, more than I had expected. That is the question of the hour, I huffed, putting away my phone. Maybe someone planted it here on purpose? They could have known it housed a demon, Kane interjected. Then that would mean that it wasn't planted by any human. Salome had a point too. We still haven't figured out why the tree was cut or where it went. Cassandra was just bringing up more questions, and we were no closer to the answers than we had been before. Maybe Adam and Violet would find something useful.
Subject number 001, Violet Eve.
This is the place. Adam pointed at a quaint little shop at the end of the street with the word tattoo blazing back at us from a neon sign. It didn't look like it had been a clinic ever, but it had probably been many things before that. We entered the shop to the whirring of a tattoo machine and the sound of metal music. Adam seemed right at home as he bobbed his head along to the song that was playing. What's up, guys? How can I help you? A fit man wearing a beanie greeted us as he was finishing up a tattoo of a tiger on a younger guy with green hair. I want to get a tattoo, Adam blurted. That wasn't the plan. I mean, we had no plan, but that wasn't what I had in mind either. Sure, I'm just finishing up here and then I can take you. What are you thinking of? The artist asked, giving the man in the chair a much-needed break by the looks of it. I was thinking of like something right on my, Adam paused to think. He didn't have a lot of exposed skin that he could get tattooed at this point.
On my chest. You have anything drawn up, or do you want me to freehand something?
The guy eyed Adam as if he knew that we were entirely unprepared.
I have some ideas, but we can discuss it when you finish with this guy.
Adam pointed at the man in the seat who was starting to turn the same color as his hair. The artist nodded and went back to his shading as Adam sat me down in the waiting room. "What the hell are you doing?" I whispered harshly at him as he took a piece of paper from a pad on the table and stole a pen from the cup at the register. "Buying you some time to look around and see what you can find?" He hissed back, concentrating hard on not melting the pen he was holding. I could have just asked him and seen if he knew anything about the clinic. We're not even sure how long this place was vacant before the tattoo shop went in. I leaned in close to Adam, trying to get a good look at what he was drawing. I can still ask those questions when we have our small talk that always goes down when getting tattooed. Meanwhile, you can excuse yourself to the bathroom and get to looking. He seems like the only one working right now. Adam leaned away from me and continued to scribble on the page. The man in the chair had finished with his session and was talking with the tattoo artist before he paid and left.
"You're next, man. I'm 7, by the way."
The artist reached out to shake Adam's hand, but I offered mine instead. "I'm Violet, and this is Adam. He's a bit of a germaphobe." I spoke behind my hand so the man wasn't offended by Adam not returning the handshake.
Well, have a seat over there while I get everything prepared. This is a very sterile environment, by the way. Can I take a look at what you drew up?"
Seven asked as Adam handed him the piece of notepaper.
"Good work, dude. You just drew this?"
Seven asked, quite impressed by Adam's art.
"Yep."
Adam had a one-word response for him.
"Have a seat and I will be with you in just a minute."
Seven turned around to clean up his station, and I took that as my time to act. "Would it be possible for me to use your toilet? I've been walking around all day looking at the sights and I just really have to wee." I crossed my legs for added effect.
Yeah, sure. Go back through that door and it's the 4th room on your right."
He nodded at me, and I sprinted past him, leaving Adam alone to try and find out what this guy knew about El Cypher, while I snooped around for anything else.
Subject name, Adam Bodine. "You from around here?" Seven asked me as he set up black and purple ink on his tray and readied his machine for a new tattoo. "No, New Orleans. Just up here on vacation with my girl." I made up a little backstory in my head, just in case he asked me personal questions. "Salem is awesome. Great scenery, rich history, some of the best pubs in the state if you ask me." Seven donned a fresh pair of gloves, and I exposed the top half of my chest for him to clean and shave for the tattoo. "This pub crawl seems pretty interesting. We had a few drinks last night, but we plan on doing more crawling tonight." I laughed as Seven prepared the template for transfer onto my skin. "Yeah, I plan on getting out of here early so I can do some bar hopping myself." Seven positioned the template on my chest and then handed me a mirror so I could approve. It was perfect. Even though I hadn't planned on a tattoo, it was worth it so that Violet could do some prying about. Seven laid me back in the chair and positioned himself over me to start inking my skin. "Where are you from?" I started my interrogation casually as the machine began to buzz. "Originally from Cambridge, but me and a few buddies moved out here months ago on some business ventures." He put the needle to my flesh and started tattooing. I couldn't even feel the needles pulsing in and out of my skin. "This place looks old. What was it before you guys moved in?" I continued with the questions, hoping to get some good answers. I wondered that myself. Apparently it used to be a fertility clinic in the 80s, but it was vacant when we rented it out. Sat here with nothing in it for like 25 years. It was a mess, too. We had to clean everything out." Seven spoke as he started on a new line of the tattoo. "Really? Like medical supplies and stuff?" I pushed even further as he continued to ink my skin. "Mostly old file cabinets and furniture, but we cleared everything out and dumped it." He nodded, going back over another line with a different color. Damn it. Maybe there wouldn't be anything for Violet to find after all.
Subject number 001. Violet Eve. Finding the bathroom wasn't a problem, but I checked every other door on the way to it. I obviously didn't have to pee, but the thought crossed my mind as I passed the bathroom and kept walking down the hall. I could see how the place had once housed exam rooms, and if there were exam rooms, there had to be a place where doctors took samples to the lab. I figured that no one would have left any files behind. They had done such a good job making sure that everything else about L-Cipher Labs had been obliterated. I came to the end of the hall where I met a door marked restricted, and figured that whatever was behind it may have been what I was looking for. I tried the knob, but it was locked. However, locks were no longer a problem for me, as I was instantly on the other side of the door and had to catch myself before I tumbled down a flight of stairs. I wanted the lights on, and they flashed above me as I made my way down the stairs into a darkened basement that looked like it hadn't been seen by living eyes in years. The room at the bottom opened up, and I could see old 80s-style computers, accompanied by test tubes and centrifuges at every station. There was other ancient medical equipment that I didn't recognize, but I was looking for something that could give me more evidence. There were no file cabinets, however. All the metal shelving had been cleared of any sort of paperwork that would have given me an idea about what we were dealing with. The only things down there that could hold any sort of patient information were the computers, but they were long dead at this point. But that didn't mean I couldn't access them somehow. I could alter reality, but would I be able to boot these ancient monsters up just because I wanted to? Was there a parallel universe where we still use these outdated machines and they function properly? It was worth a shot. I sat down in front of one of the computers and ran my fingers across the dusty keys, imagining what it would have been like to work in the lab so long ago. Information wasn't kept on hard drives then, that much I knew, so I was going to have to find some sort of storage device to even get what I wanted, if I could get this monster up and running first. Surprisingly, all the computers were still plugged into an old electrical strip, so I tried turning it on first, hoping that I didn't set the place on fire in doing so. I had not expected the computer to even turn on, but there it was, a blue screen, as DOS booted up on the monitor. Holy shit, I was not expecting that. I exclaimed to myself as I looked around for a floppy disk. I may not get what I wanted if I found one, but something was better than nothing. I hunted around the room for any sort of storage container or box that could hold one of these antique record keepers, but I wasn't finding anything. Of course they left the computers, but took all the files with them. Why would they leave that behind, Violet? I asked myself harshly as I opened up an empty metal cabinet. There was nothing. Then a light bulb went off in my head. This I can do. I spoke aloud to myself again as I stuck my hands inside the vacant cabinet. Somewhere out there was the floppy disks, or whatever, that housed all the patient information from this particular lab, and possibly more. If not here, they had to still be present in a different existence. I still had my hands inside the cabinet, and when I pulled them out, I was holding a container filled with at least 15 floppy disks. Hoo-hoo! Huzzah! I cried, but quickly silenced myself as I carried them back to the booted computer and slipped the first one into the drive. I had no idea how to use this thing, but I pretended that I did, and soon I had access to the information on the first disk. There were dozens of files on there, all marked as subject with a number assigned to it. These files were numbered in the hundreds, and I randomly picked one that was titled Subject Number 102. What I saw caused a knot to form in my stomach. Subject Number 102, Melissa Carrington. Mother, Katrina Carrington. Father, not applicable. I whispered to myself as I read through Missy's profile. Her mother had undergone in vitro fertilization at the clinic in Dublin. It detailed that she and her husband had been trying to conceive for over 10 years when they finally came to the labs for help. I read all the way to the bottom before closing out of the file and checking on the others. They all had names. They all had birthdays the same as mine. I popped the disc from the machine and rifled through the storage box for another. Each disc was labeled with a set of subject numbers from 1 to 667. I thought the mark of the beast was 666. I scoffed, coming to the disc marked subject number 001 through number 045. I was subject number 001. The disc was shaking in my hand as I inserted it into the computer and opened up the file for subject number 001. Subject number 001, Violet Eve Quirk. Mother, Rain Eden Quirk. Father, not applicable. It was reading pretty much like Missy's profile. I scanned down a little further and realized that this file was my first. The one I had found on the blog site was more recent. Nationality, Irish American. Irish American? I was Irish, born in Belfast, but this was telling me something else entirely. Hometown, Newcastle, County Down, North Ireland, formerly New Orleans, Louisiana, USA. What in the ever-loving fuck? I scrolled past all the details about myself that I already knew until I came to the notes. Subject number 001 is the resulting offspring of patient 0. Rain Eden Quirk was living in New Orleans, Louisiana at the time of conception, due to fleeing her home country of Ireland after an abusive relationship. She procured the job through an affiliate in Ireland and was transferred to the United States for 3 years before undergoing treatment. Quirk was essentially the test subject for our inhibitor serum, and it proved a success. The child resulting from this implantation was the first efficaciously contained embryo, proving that the serum could effectively suppress the fabricated DNA of Dr. Cypher's design. The mother suffered no ill effects. If anything, she showed no signs of the typical symptoms of pregnancy. Officially, this subject marked the success of 667, profiles of the other 666 subjects to follow. I swallowed hard. I had been the first of 667 children to be altered and successfully implanted into a human host. Lucinda Cypher had been the one to orchestrate all of this. Why I hadn't done a search for her name was beyond me, but that could come later. My mother had been a first also, and my being born had caused her to eventually lose her life. I had dug up too much. I wasn't even slightly prepared for what I had just read. I heard footsteps above me then. Someone was probably looking for me. There was no way for me to print off 667 files, so I ejected the disk from the computer, slid it back into its case, and jammed the whole thing inside my sling bag. In a moment, I would walk out of the bathroom, and no one would have even known I was down here. No one but me and Adam. Subject name, Adam Bodine. Seven had finished my tattoo before he realized that Violet had never come back from the bathroom. I didn't have any idea what was taking her so long. The tattoo had taken over an hour to finish. Your girlfriend okay, man? She's been in the bathroom a long time. Seven asked as he covered my tattoo to keep it moist. We had some clam chowder before we got here. Seafood tends to not sit well with her, but she insisted, while in Rome. I tried not to laugh nervously as I got up from my seat and gestured towards the back of the shop. You don't mind paying first, do you? Don't need anyone running out without paying. Seven eyeballed me as I extracted my wallet from my pocket. How much? 120. Seven held out his hand and I counted out quite a few $20 bills for him before going through the door into the back. I found the bathroom pretty quickly and hesitated before I knocked. The door flung open and Violet was standing there, her eyes ringed in red. Are you ready to go? I asked as Seven appeared down the hall. I guess he didn't trust us. Yeah. She nodded, looping her arm through mine as I led her back to the front of the shop. How's your stomach? Seven asked her as we passed by. I cleared my throat casually as Violet responded. Better. I was glad that she didn't elaborate on that response. Come back and see us, guys. Maybe next time your girl can get a matching tattoo of her liking. Seven held the front door open for us as we stepped out into the street and headed back down the road. Did you find anything? I asked as she still clung tightly to my arm. Yes, she breathed, clutching her bag at her hip. Thank fucking God, because I didn't get much from old Seven back there. I jerked my thumb behind me. Violet abruptly stopped. I had to keep myself from stumbling as she took me by the arms and ordered me to face her. What is it, Violet? What did you find? I knew something wasn't right, but she seemed downright messed up over whatever it was that she had uncovered. A room full of old computers that somehow still worked. I sort of summoned these. Violet extracted a plastic box from her bag and handed it to me. These are the patient files of all of us. All 667 of us. 667? There are 667 of us? I knew my expression must have looked fucked up. I felt fucked up after that tidbit of information.
One more than the biblical mark of the beast.
She noted and went on.
I read my own file.
What did it say? I was eager to know more about us.
It talked about the inhibitor serum. It also said that my mom was patient 0, the first successful human host for one of our kind. I was their initial success, Adam.
Violet's hands began to shudder as she still held onto my arms. What about the other files? Did you find mine? I wondered what it said if she had.
I didn't get that far, but we have all the files now.
Violet responded, still visibly shaken. But how are we going to read any of them on these ancient floppy disks? I had opened up the case to see that what was inside was essentially useless.
We just have to find a working computer from the 80s.
Easier said than done, Violet. We'll figure it out. But I got a call from Cassandra while you were off playing Nancy Drew, and she wanted us back as soon as possible. Naomi is ending her shift, and she wants us to go to the square and discuss things. I guess they're having some sort of celebration tonight in regards to the pub crawl weekend. I took her hand and began walking back down the street.
Okay,
she responded, flexing her hand in mine.
You know, you never did show me the tattoo you got.
Violet smirked as I paused again in my step. You want to see it? I smiled slightly, not sure how she would take it. Violet nodded at me, and I pulled down the collar of my shirt and peeled the bandage back. She drew in a sharp breath when her eyes fell upon the tattoo, inked on my chest in purple and black. It looked just like the one she had on her forehead, save for a few more details that I added to make it my own. It had been the first thing that I thought about when Seven asked me what tattoo I was going to get.
Adam.
Violet flushed lilac and averted her eyes from me for a second.
I don't know what to say. Let's just hope that we never stop being friends, or that eye is going to haunt you forever.
She was right, but I had a good feeling that neither of us was going anywhere anytime soon. Subject name, Naomi Starr.
Where are they?
Cassandra checked her watch as the 5 of us walked into the middle of Derby Square. I just texted Adam and he said that they were almost here. Calm down. Henri seemed annoyed by Cassandra's impatience. People were piling into the streets and crowding around one specific area. There were already those who were several drinks in, stumbling around, as the others mingled about with beers in their hands.
Ooh, I see Violet.
Salome was standing on her tiptoes as she pointed up the street. You could see Violet's hair, even with her small stature, poking out above the sea of naturally coiffed heads. I waved my hand high to get their attention, and soon we were all reunited.
Anything?
Cassandra asked immediately as the two rejoined our group. Nothing, Adam responded, as Violet still clung to his side. She had this look on her face that told me something had happened, whether they were talking about it or not. Ladies and gentlemen! A voice boomed over a megaphone as people turned their attention to the spot that was shrouded by so many onlookers. We were going to have to push our way through if we were going to see anything, and I took it upon myself to lead the way. Gather round, gather round. My name is Victor, and I am the owner and proprietor of a chain of popular pubs and bars all over the Northeast. The lovely city of Salem has allowed me to host a special event to highlight this year's pub crawl, and I am proud to say that it is going to be hot. The voice rang out and the crowd began to cheer as we finally made it close to the mass of people. The pyre was set up in front of a raised platform where Victor was standing, a microphone in hand. He was wearing a witch's mask, complete with green skin and a wart on his nose. Tonight is the grand opening of the Witch's Brew Pub, and we are going to set the city ablaze. The crowd cheered again, and I groaned in return. The rest of my company seemed interested in what he was going to do, as I had forgotten to mention that to them, but I knew they weren't going to like it any more than I did. So, how many of you received a wooden medallion with our cauldron logo on it? Victor asked, and a bunch of people waved their hands in the air. Good! Those of you with a medallion get a free Fire Pyre cocktail and half off an entree at the Witch's Brew. He hollered, and even more people applauded in response. Awesome. free cocktail. That shit better be good because I was pissed. And once night falls, be sure to stay tuned as we light this puppy ablaze in honor of our opening night in Salem. Victor waved out at the crowd as people began to clap and slowly started to disperse, figuring out which bar or pub to hit first. So these get us free drinks? I have like 25 free drinks. Adam laughed, patting the pocket of his jacket. Good thing, because I'm going to need to be fucking wasted when they light that thing up tonight. I shook my head and followed the others as we started our run at a bar on the other side of the street. I was going to need a pregame it tonight. We all drank a bit at a few different bars before ending up at the Witch's Brew around 9 o'clock. Apparently they weren't lighting the pyre till midnight, so we still had a few hours to get some more drinks in us. I'm going to start with a glass of wine and work my way up to that free cocktail. I sat us all down at a round table near the doors of the pub. I wanted to be able to see the pyre from the front window. We ordered a few and began to talk about what little we knew from the day's earlier investigations. So it was an acacia tree from the Philippines? Violet asked as she sipped on her beer. Yep, seems like someone deliberately planted it here, knowing that a demon resided inside of it. She was completely harmless up until someone decided to chop the damn tree down. I'm sure they knew this would happen. I was already 3 drinks in with no signs of stopping. The person that cut it down could have been the same person that planted it, if that person was a demon. Adam chimed in, taking a shot of vodka. It wasn't. 2 different guys. Well, there were multiple men cutting down the tree in my dream. I leaned back in my seat and watched person after person ordering drinks at the bar. They had made an announcement that those with medallions could start getting their free cocktails at around 11:30. I guess it was easier to make the free transactions all at once. I'm really curious about what those fire pyre cocktails taste like. Henri was sitting next to me, drinking a dark lager. Like cinnamon ass, Kane retorted. Apparently he was not a fan of Fireball. Oh, here's a medallion if you want to get one for free. Adam pulled one from his pocket and passed it over to Henri. Cassandra had declined on the free cocktail and was trying to stay sober so that she was able to keep an eye on the rest of us. I think I need some air. Violet was looking a bit anxious as her eyes darted around the room at all the people. You all right? I scooted close to her and casually rubbed her back. I'm not a big fan of huge crowds, and this place is jam-packed. She winced as a man drunkenly backed into her chair, scooting it in closer to the table. You want to go for a walk? I asked her. I was a bit over it myself. That sounds good. Violet nodded and scooted her chair back into the man that had just stumbled into her. Excuse you, bitch! He snarled drunkenly, and I watched as all 3 men at our table stood at once. Henri wasn't as tall, but the stature of the other 2 made the man weak at the knees. You want to try that again, asshole? I could have sworn I saw flame spit from Adam's mouth. My bad. The guy quickly apologized and scampered off before he got his ass kicked. Do you want one of us to go with you two so that shit doesn't happen again? Kane was fuming almost as much as Adam. We've got it handled. No one is going to fuck with us. I winked. It was true. My dream abilities may not have been an act of power, but I discovered that I was surprisingly stronger than I was before my 30th birthday. We excused ourselves from the table and exited the pub, arm in arm. Sorry about that. I have just a slight social anxiety problem. Violet apologized to me as she puffed away on a cigarette. No worries. I know how I can be for some. I patted her on the back again as we wandered out into the street for a stroll. There weren't as many people out, now that it was dark. Most were either getting drunk in the pub or at home avoiding the wasted people that were roaming the streets like beer-drowned zombies. We found ourselves over by the pyre as Violet leaned in to get a better look. How disrespectful can you be to cut down a living tree just to use it as a mockery and burn it to ash? Violet asked rhetorically, but I responded anyway. Pretty fucking disrespectful. I leaned into the pyre to get a better look myself. I reached out to touch the trunk, accidentally flaking the bark from the tree to reveal a medallion-shaped hole. "Do you see this?" I pointed at the cutout in the trunk, and Violet came to look herself. "That's about the same size as these." Violet held up the medallion that was hung around her neck. "Yeah, but I had to remove the bark from the tree before I even saw the hole." I threw up a brow before checking around me for prying eyes and then peeled back more bark from another section. This revealed 2 more medallion-shaped holes of about the same size. "How is that even possible?" Violet was puzzled as she scraped away more bark, exposing even more holes. I thumbed my own medallion, wondering myself how it was even possible to cut perfect circular pieces out of a tree trunk and still leave the bark intact. "This tree is hollow, Naomi." Violet bravely stuck her finger into one of the holes and wiggled it around. Then it clicked. Many holes in a hollow wooden post. I knew my woods well enough by smell and lifted my medallion to my nose to take a whiff. "This is acacia, Violet. I'd know that smell anywhere." "Of course I would. We used it in a lot of incense for protection." "You don't think..." Violet didn't want to believe it. "Henri told us that the Batibot would retreat into holes in the post to evade humans. She would kill anyone sleeping next to her post." My brain was still going 100 miles a minute. "This has to be the work of another demon, then. Something purposefully planted that tree and waited to cut it down so they could do what?" Violet was working with me to finally get to the bottom of this. It finally hit me as I was rubbing my thumb over the medallion repeatedly. I burst. "The medallion! I think the medallion is the reason I encountered the Batibot in the first place. I was wearing it when I went to sleep." Essentially, I was sleeping by the Batibot's post, and she took offense to that. Violet's eyes went wide. "What time is it?" she asked, frantically glancing towards the door of the witch's brew. I took my phone out and checked the time. "It's close to midnight. I bet everyone is getting their free drinks right now." "Everyone who is wearing a medallion gets a free fire pyre cocktail." Violet's voice came out almost winded. "We need to get back to the pub." Violet breezed past me as I called out to her. "What is it, Vi? What did you figure out?" But she was already to the front doors, and I was struggling to catch up. Subject number 001, Violet Eve. I burst through the doors of the pub to find exactly what I had hoped I wouldn't. Everyone inside was fast asleep. There were people slumped over the bar, laid out on top of tables, and others who looked like they'd flipped over backward off their bar stools. "What the hell is going on?" Naomi was breathing hard as she finally caught up to me. "They laced the cocktails." I breathed quietly. Each and every person in that bar had a bright red fire pyre cocktail near their person. They littered the bar top. Some glasses were smashed on the floor with crimson liquid pooling on the floors. Even our table had one for each person sitting there. Except Salome and Cassandra were missing from our group. I thought Cain didn't drink. Naomi was going from person to person at the table, checking everyone for signs of life, but all parties were in a deep slumber. I rounded my giant friend and took the glass that was sitting in front of him. It was red and sparkling with a little cherry floating among the ice. I held the glass to my nose and sniffed. He was drinking a Virgin Shirley Temple. I used to love those when I was a kid. It isn't the drink specifically, but what they put in them. I guarantee you they used phenobarbital. That's a sedative, right? Naomi leaned in and placed her fingers against Henri's neck to check for a pulse. Yes. The elixir version is usually a clear red liquid. They never saw it coming. I slammed the glass down on the table and began making my way through the sea of bodies that littered the pub floor. Where are you going now? Naomi hurried up beside me as I made my way to the toilets. I don't see Salome or Cassandra. Maybe they are still awake and can tell us exactly what happened. I slowly cracked the door open and began peering into the stalls. All were vacant, all except the last one, which was locked. Salome? I whispered, trying to wrench the door open. Groaning could be heard from behind the door as I dropped to the floor and peered underneath. There was Salome, an arm slung haphazardly over the toilet, her eyes partially opened as she struggled to speak. I got you. I crawled underneath and took her by the shoulders, carefully dragging her out into the open bathroom. What happened, Sal? Who did this? I asked, cradling her head in my lap. I don't know. She grunted, her head lolling to the side as I desperately tried to keep her conscious. I was talking with Ammon, the arborist, when everyone started getting their free drinks. I drank about half of mine before I felt like I was going to puke. People just started dropping like flies as I ran into the bathroom. I should have checked on Kane. Tears were welling in her inky black eyes. He's okay, Sal. We need to get everyone out of here. Can you stand? I asked, but she was already gone. Her head drooped forward in my lap. She was out like a light. Naomi was crouched in front of me, holding onto Salome's hand as her body went limp in my arms. Help me get her out of here. We still have to find Cassandra. I hoisted Salome up over my shoulder as Naomi grabbed her legs and assisted me in carrying her back out to the bar. We placed her in her chair next to Kane before going back out amongst the people in search of Cassandra. There was a possibility that she had drank one of the cocktails too, or something like it, and could have been unconscious somewhere inside the tavern. I picked my way across bodies that were piled up on the floor, looking for any sign of Cassandra's usual white garb, and checking each and every person I came across to make sure they were still alive. I was just checking a woman who was doubled over in a rather uncomfortable-looking position when a hand shot out and grabbed my ankle. Stifling a yelp, I spun around to face a handsome man with dark hair, gripping tightly to my leg as if it would anchor him to the waking world. I knelt down in front of him and took his hand as I asked, "What's your name?" Ammon Wright. He choked out, his yellow eyes bleary as he peered up at me. Don't worry, Ammon. Everything is going to be all right. Did you drink anything? I figured that he must have had the cocktail too. That free drink was a doozy. His voice was hoarse as I helped him roll over and tried to sit him up. Naomi was behind the bar now, checking on the bartender as I carried on a punctuated conversation with the arborist. I found someone who is awake, Naomi. I called out to her. Can you come keep an eye on Mr. Wright while I go find Cassandra? Naomi had disappeared behind the bar and didn't respond to my question, so I called out again. Violet? I heard her voice come from the other side. Come here. Just sit tight, Ammon. Try and keep yourself awake. I'll be right back. I propped him up against a bar stool and circled around to see what it was that Naomi needed. She was crouched down in front of an older man, possibly in his 40s, but this man wasn't asleep like the rest of them. Still dangling from his face was the witch mask he had been wearing earlier. Victor, the proprietor of the pub. He's dead. My voice caught in my throat. It was already happening. He is, and this is the man I saw in my dream chopping down the acacia tree. Naomi's amber-colored eyes shot to mine. This man is no demon. That much was clear. He was completely human and completely deceased. Then who is doing all of this? Naomi asked me, closing the man's wide-open eyes. Maybe the man you saw planting the tree. I didn't have any more answers. The people around us were all probably thrust into a nightmare world where the Batibot was beginning to hunt them down, one by one, to smother them with her bulbous body. We were running out of time. Am I going to have to go in there and save these people? Naomi whispered to herself. She didn't seem like she was prepared for that, but the weight was already on her shoulders. I found someone who was awake, the arborist that Salome met with earlier. Maybe he saw something, but we need to get back to him before he loses consciousness too. I left Victor's side and came back to Ammon. To my amazement, he was still awake, clutching the bar stool for support. I need you to tell me what you saw. I knew that he had probably seen more than Salome had before she made a mad dash for the toilet. I saw... He began to recollect the events prior, when Naomi appeared from behind the bar and took a deep breath so audible that it caused me to turn and look at her. "Get away from him, Violet." Her eyes were ablaze as she stood there, her fists clenched at her sides. I wasn't going to argue, and slowly stood, backing myself up to Naomi. "That's the bastard who planted the tree." Naomi's finger shot out as she pointed directly at Amon. "For fuck's sake. Sometimes you humans are just too damn smart." Amon began to clap as he blinked his eyes a few times and pulled himself up from the ground. Amon was a demon masquerading as an arborist. "Why aren't you two asleep like the others? I know we didn't run out of those lovely fire pyre cocktails." He wrung his hands, taking a step closer to me and Naomi. "We were outside taking a break from all the chaos when we figured out your little plan," Naomi hissed. We weren't exactly sure why he was doing it, but did demons really need a reason why? "Figured out my little... Who the hell are you?" Amon narrowed his eyes at the two of us as we began to back ourselves towards the door. "Not human, that's for sure," I huffed, ready to fight if I had to. I felt myself shift as I lost all ability to hold my altered appearance. My hair drained of color as my third eye popped open and I looked down at my arms to see that they were that dusty lilac color that I had despised so much. Amon's eyes flashed red and a smile crept across his face as he began to clap his hands again. "You're one of them," he exclaimed, turning his attention from me to Naomi. "And you too?" He pointed between us. Naomi didn't respond. I could hear that her breathing had become ragged as the adrenaline began to course through her body. "Amazing. Two of you in one place?" Amon cackled, throwing his head back in delight. There were more than two of us, but I wasn't going to give him the pleasure of knowing three more of us were already right where he wanted them to be. "I don't understand." Naomi finally spoke. She must have been asking herself a million questions as to why all of this was happening. "It's really quite simple, but I won't bore you with all the details. This was hundreds of years in the making. I have been waiting for this promotion for centuries." Amon's face had twisted into something hideous as fangs sprouted from his mouth, not unlike the ones that Cain possessed. "Go ahead, gloat. You deserve it," I urged him, trying to buy us some time. "Well, 2 less souls for the time being won't hurt anything, I guess." Amon laughed at himself as he reached behind the bar for a bottle of scotch and lounged back atop a stool. "I brought that pretty little acacia tree clear across the ocean and planted it amidst the trees of what would be known as Proctor's Ledge. It needed time to grow, needed time for the demon inside of it to settle and feel more at home before I executed my plan. Believe me, it was a pain in the ass waiting for that long, and I had no idea how ruthless you humans could be. Murdering your own kind because maybe, just maybe, they were involved with the devil's witchcraft." Amon laughed again, knocking back half a bottle of liquor. "I wasn't going to be the one to eventually incur the wrath of the Batibot. Filipino demons are no laughing business. So I worked on fostering friendships in faraway lands until I had found myself the perfect scapegoat in Victor Redding. He was trying to make a name for himself, building all these bars and pubs and making money off your sad little addictions. I suggested opening up an establishment here in Salem with a kitschy theme to draw in the big bucks, and he took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. Granted, it was illegal to cut down a tree in a protected historical site, but Victor was such a greedy bastard that it didn't matter. Cue my idea about the pyre and the medallion promotion. Victor just ran with it. I had so many souls all lined up for free drinks wearing their necklaces made from the wood of the Batibot's tree. Toss in some spiked cocktails, and I had the perfect formula. Stupid humans wear a medallion to get free drink knocks them out cold, Batibot goes after each and every one of them in Dreamland for sleeping near her post. And I get to collect all the souls from their lifeless bodies when she is done with them. I mean, it took a lot of planning and a lot of waiting, but more or less I didn't have to lift a fucking finger. The orchestration was fucking beautiful. Amon finished his scotch just in time for me to come up with a plan. While he had been distracted with his gloating, I had decided what it was I needed to do. Amon didn't need that stool he was sitting on. The chair disappeared from beneath him and he came crashing down hard to the ground as I snatched Naomi by the hand and burst through the front doors of the pub. "You're going to have to go find those people and save them from the Batibot," I huffed as we ran back down the street into Derby Square. I can't do that. That is a shit ton of people to save." Naomi denied that she would be able to save anyone. "No, you can do this. You're the only one that can do this. You have the ability to change the outcome of dreams. You can control what goes on around you, and you can defeat the Batibot and wake everyone up." I pushed her to do the right thing. We had just come to the pyre in the middle of the square when I stopped dead in my tracks. "Cassandra," I exhaled as my eyes fell upon the makeshift burning stake. She was tethered to it with thick ropes bound at her ankles, midsection, and shoulders, a bandana stuffed in her mouth to keep her from screaming. "You thought you were smart, didn't you?" Almond came from out of nowhere and began walking towards us. "But I'm smarter and much quicker." He grinned at me with a mouthful of jagged teeth. "You have to go now." I nudged Naomi with my elbow as I prepared myself for a fight. Almond threw his arms into the air and looked up towards the sky as he cried out. "Really? What are you going to do? You can't save all of them if they are asleep. There are just 2 of you. And this will be the finale. Once the Batibot has killed all the people here tonight, I will set this pyre ablaze with one last sacrifice, ensuring that I collect all the souls that she has procured for me, going out in a blaze of glory. Now, Naomi, run. Run far away from here and get into that dream. You have the medallion. Now go." I pushed her. The sudden movement caused Amon to look back at me, and I barreled into him as Naomi took off fleeing in the opposite direction. I just hoped that I had the skills to hold him off long enough for her to bring everyone back. June 19th, 2016. Subject name, Naomi Starr. I had to find myself a quiet place to gather my thoughts before I proceeded with the dream. I knew that time was running out for both friends and strangers, but I had to prepare myself before I just dove in there. I started gathering protective crystals from the shelves of Brigade's Dawn and made a circle on the floor in the book section. I sprinkled a ring of salt and tossed out herbs that would assist me in my dream walking, though I probably didn't need any of that. The dreams were under my control. I laid myself out inside the ring and gripped the wooden medallion tight in my hands as I willed myself into the dream world that the talisman was connected to. I was back in the same dream world I had been in the night before. Modern Salem, but with a gloomy and sinister twist. The sky was dark, but the sun was up, a smoldering blood-red glow high in the sky. All the trees around me were bare, and the streets were littered with debris as the structures around me had begun crumbling to dust. I heard screams in the distance, people pleading for their lives. There was no way I was going to let anyone die after what I had witnessed in my dreams before, and I pumped my legs as fast as they would go in the direction of those cries. They led me straight to Proctor's Ledge. People were packed into old wooden carts like cattle, roped in threes, as the wagons drove themselves down to the knot of trees where the hanging had taken place in 1692. I frantically scanned about for someone familiar and finally spotted Henri, tethered to 2 other men as he was being driven to the thicket by Gabby. I knew there was a reason she fucking bothered me so much. She was the goddamned Batibot. Sadly, several bodies already hung from the trees, their feet dangling above the rocky ground below. "Get the fuck off me!" I heard Adam bellow as Gabby withdrew him, Kane, and another man from the next cart and lined them up next to Henri. "No one sleeps near my post. How dare you humans desecrate my home and proceed to wear it around as if it were your own?" Gabby roared, slapping Adam across the face. He spit blood on the ground, and I watched as his form shifted. Curled horns wound from his head, scales sprouted around his eyes, and his arms burned with the fire of 1,000 suns. Gabby hissed like some threatened animal and backed herself into a tree, almost dislodging one of the hanging bodies above her. Then I saw poor Salome under a far tree, arms bound behind her as a rope slithered from the limbs above and wound its way around her neck. I couldn't wait any longer to act, and hurtled down the hill before taking flight on invisible wings. Salome was being hoisted up into the tree, and I heard Cain roar like some angered beast as she struggled to free her arms. I plucked a long ritual blade from thin air and slashed through the ropes before dropping to the ground and catching Salome in my arms. "You?" Gabby cackled. "I never expected you to be a part of this, participating in the desecration of my home. I had been watching you for weeks, thinking you were one of the good ones, but you bear the same medallion as the rest of them." Gabby came at me, pointing a long, jeweled finger right at my face. I lashed out with lightning speed as my fist connected with her beautiful face. I watched as she went down hard, head over heels, and tumbled further down the embankment. "Help the others," I instructed as I quickly untied Cain, but Adam had already burned through his bindings and was making quick work of Henri and Salome's ropes. Cain began cutting the few people from the trees that had already been hanged as I slid down to where Gabby was trying to get her bearings again. "They have to pay for their trespassing." Gabby pulled herself from the dirt, her stiletto heels sinking into the moist earth under us. "You don't have to do this, Gabby." I pleaded with her, but I knew that her death would be inevitable, if I could figure out how to kill her. "You humans cut down my home, took it and mutilated the beautiful tree that housed me for centuries, and then used it to make money off of a tragedy." She morphed back into a gelatinous blob and came slithering at me at top speed. I leapt up so high in the air that she slid right underneath my feet before I came back down to earth. "We didn't do this to your home. Yes, humans can be terrible creatures, but it was another demon that orchestrated all of this." A part of me was starting to feel sorry for the demon, but I couldn't let her kill a bunch of people based on her misconceptions of what was actually going on. "You're lying." Gabby turned back around and had now doubled in size as she rolled her bulbous body towards me like a bowling ball. "How do you think you got here? You were brought across the ocean by a demon named Amen as a way to collect souls." I huffed, swatting her with a giant croquet mallet that I had materialized as she passed me by. It knocked her back up the hill, and I watched as Cain flung Salome out of the way before Gabby came rolling back down. She stopped herself and changed appearance one more time, back to the beautiful ebony-haired woman. "You're lying!" she screamed, her eyes swirling with fury and disbelief. "No, you should be going after Amun, not these innocent people." I was actually reasoning with a damn demon. I watched as Gabby's face softened, and she raised her hand in the air. She snapped her fingers as everyone piled up on Proctor's ledge screamed in unison. Subject number 001. Violet Eve. "You little bitch!" Amun wailed as I sent his body crashing into the base of the pyre. The acacia pole rocked in its foundation, and Cassandra let out a muffled shriek as it teetered on an angle. I am already so sick and tired of this bullshit. I gripped my teeth as I raced up to him and cracked him in the jaw with such a force that several sharp teeth went flying from his mouth. "You know, I have to give her credit. She created some of the best of us, but your kind is ruthless." Amun rubbed at his jaw, popping it back into place where I had dislocated it. Was he talking about Lucinda's cipher? "Enough chit-chat, okay? I know how much your kind loves to talk, and I'm not here to make friends." I went to strike him again when he caught me by the wrist and slung me into a street lamp. "What time is it?" Amun asked aloud, checking the pocket watch that he pulled from his trousers. "Well, I missed my deadline, but the witching hour will do quite nicely for a bonfire." He was waiting for the 13th hour when demons cause the most chaos. At least he was going to wait, giving Naomi enough time to make sure that everyone made it out of the dream alive. And it would give me enough time to get Cassandra down from the pyre. "Since I am such a good host, would you like to join your friend on the pyre? It'll be the best seat in the house for the show." Almond grinned wildly at me as I picked myself up from the street and stood my ground. "How generous of you," I responded as he inched closer, and the street lamp behind me groaned as it came crashing down on top of him. I hoped that it would have squashed him like a bug, but all it did was give me enough time to rush to Cassandra and try to untie her as he struggled beneath the wooden pole. "Are you all right?" I panted as I pulled the bandana from Cassandra's mouth. "I've been better," she responded, sounding relieved while I fumbled with the knots of her bindings. "I don't think so." Almond's words were right in my ear as he gripped me by my hair and flung me from the pyre. He stuffed the bandana back in Cassandra's mouth as she began to writhe under the ropes. "You are a real nuisance, you know that? Is all of your kind this way?" He jumped from the pyre and planted his foot right in the middle of my chest. I wheezed as I fought to take a breath. I had begun to tire out. After all, I hadn't slept well the night before. "Do you give up?" Almond sneered, digging his foot deeper into my sternum. "Wait," I huffed, waving my hands in defeat. I need to say something." Almond relieved a bit of the pressure on my chest and bent over to hear me better. "Are you going to plead for your life like your mother did?" My third eye felt like it was vibrating in my skull. Almond recognized me now. He knew that I was one of the 667. He knew that I was subject number 001 and my mother was patient 0. Had he been the one that killed her? I was just going to ask. I had to keep myself from becoming enraged and botching the whole thing up. "Can you continue to do this with a broken ankle?" "What?" He didn't understand the question at first, but with a sickening crack, his ankle shattered and he fell headlong right over me. He shrieked in agony as I flipped myself over and willed the other ankle to snap into a million pieces. "You won't be able to do much if you can't walk, can you?" I was ready to blow him to pieces like I had that first angel, my third eye beginning to twitch as I felt the energy inside it begin to surge. You fucking... Almond gasped, gripping at both of his ankles as I stood before him, ready to break the rest of the bones in his body. "Are you done now?" I cocked my head to the side, looming over the demon with my third eye wide. "It isn't that easy." Almond snapped his ankles back into place. "Gosh, look at the time." In an instant, he was on his feet. He shoved me out of the way and snapped his fingers towards the pyre. A roaring sound erupted, and I watched as the base of the pyre was lit ablaze. "No!" I screamed, trying to run for Cassandra as I heard her muffled cries, the flames beginning to lick at her bare feet. "The Batibot should have taken all your friends by now. It doesn't usually take one long to suffocate a room full of people with the nauseating weight of that body." Almond had me around the throat now and was dragging me towards the blaze when I heard it. Pop! A cracking sound from the pub shook the foundation of the city. Naomi came rushing up the street as Adam and the rest of the group exited the bar. "Drop her, Amon," Naomi commanded, but he practically laughed in her face. "You have no authority here, witch. You're only useful in dreamland." "I may not be able to stop you, but she can." Naomi stepped aside as a beautiful woman with jet black hair came forward. "And you would be?" Almond looked nonplussed, still gripping me tightly by the neck as the flames leapt higher around Cassandra. Henri ran to take her down, but I watched as the fire jumped even higher, belching smoke in Henri's face with such a force that he had to shield himself. "Gabby, and you let them destroy my home." I watched as Gabby's beautiful form grew in size until the hag, the Batibot, was towering in front of us. Amon immediately released his hold on me, and I was able to scramble away just as the Batibot brought down her fist like a club. The ground shook as my friends fought to stay on their feet, and I crawled my way over to the pyre. I blinked and the fire was doused, a billowing cloud of black smoke pluming into the air. "Get her down!" I barked at Henri, who quickly climbed the side of the pole and cut Cassandra free. Her body was limp. The fire may not have gotten to her yet, but the smoke had. "She isn't breathing," he cried, carrying her over to the sidewalk. But I didn't have time to help him. The Batibot had flung Aman into the air, and his body collided with mine, sending us both clear across the street. My ears were ringing from the blow, and the wind had been knocked out of me as I tried to pull myself to my feet. "Paganti!" I heard Gabby scream, a blob of a body rolling towards us like a boulder. Aman tossed me out of the way and held out his hands to brace for the blow, his feet digging a trench in the road as the Batibot pushed him down the pavement. "It's rather embarrassing that you call yourself a demon." Aman insulted her as he fought back at least a megaton of rolling flesh. "I'm embarrassed to be lumped in with your kind," she hissed. As if to add insult to injury, the Batibot melted back into the beautiful Gabby and backhanded Ammon across the face. The force sent him sailing right into the pyre, tiny sparks still smoldering inside the kindling whirling about in the air with his landing. Before he had a chance to come back for more, Gabby was already on him. "All I wanted was to live my life out in peace, and you've ruined it." Gabby picked him up by his busted ankle and slung him up against the pole before looking for something that could tether him to it. She didn't even have to ask for help. I reformed the ropes that had been binding Cassandra and assisted with winding them around his body as Gabby pinned him to the pyre upside down. "I won't let you take the souls of those people. I may have killed a few, but I reconsidered the rest, thanks to Naomi." Gabby jabbed a pointy nail in between Amon's ribs. "The only soul going to hell is yours." I hadn't realized that Naomi had gone to help Henri and the rest revive Cassandra, but Adam had come back. Gabby turned her attention towards him and nodded her head as he walked over to the pyre and placed his hand in the kindling at the bottom. The fire erupted immediately, and I heard the hissing sound of Amon's flesh as he shrieked in agony. Cassandra's coughing caught my attention, and I turned my head to see Henri cradling her in his arms as Naomi dashed back out into the street. "No! You promised me you wouldn't do this!" Naomi screamed at Gabby as she stood by watching Ammon be devoured by the flames. "I can't rest knowing that my home has been destroyed. I have gotten my revenge, and would spend the rest of eternity wandering this earth with guilt. It's time." Gabby reached out and ran a bejeweled nail down Naomi's cheek. As she pulled her hand back, I watched Gabby's form waver in the curling smoke and her body disintegrated to ash and swirled away on the wind. There was nothing left of Ammon either. The pole was charred, but his body was non-existent. There was absolutely no evidence that he had ever been there. Adam helped me up from the street and took me over to Naomi, who was silently watching the fire in tears. She had to do this. I wrapped my arm around her as she buried her face on my shoulder. She promised me she wouldn't. But I think deep down, I knew. Naomi wiped tears from her flushed cheeks and went back to watching the fire. "Guess we should get rid of these while we're at it." Adam pulled a handful of medallions from his pocket and tossed them into the bonfire. I looped mine from around my neck and threw it in at the same time as Naomi. "Were you able to save everyone?" I asked Naomi, watching the orange of the fire swallow the wooden talismans whole. "Most. She'd killed a few before I got there. I knew she was a demon, but I just feel bad for her." Naomi waved Cain and Salome over as she instructed them to toss their own medallions into the fire pit, along with the rest of the ones they had collected from the other bar patrons. "And everyone else?" I still hadn't seen any of the other people from the pub. "They're still inside the witch's brew. I don't know how we're going to explain this to the cops." Naomi shook her head as Cain tossed necklace after necklace into the smoldering embers of the fire. "Then let's not. We were never here," Adam replied, his body so close to mine I could feel the heat. How are the police not already here, though? I wondered aloud. There was no way that the sounds of a street fight, a blazing fire in the square at 1 a.m., and a mega monster stomping through the center of Salem hadn't alerted anyone.
That's because I put the rest of the city to sleep. Can't have such a messy situation going on while I'm around.
A lilting voice rang out behind us. Who the fuck are you? Kane was ready for battle now, and came lumbering forward at the smartly dressed woman standing under the brightest lamp on the street.
Not important. Just know that I helped save your asses from jail.
She smirked, pulling her dark red hair back from her face. The woman was absolutely stunning. Thank you? My gratitude came out more like a question.
You're welcome, Violet. Keep up the good work.
She winked at me and then vanished, taking the light from the lamp with her. At least someone was looking out for us.
Can we go home now?
I leaned into Adam, ready to be done with our little trip to Salem. Are we not going to talk about the woman that just disappeared before our very eyes? Adam steered me up the street as the rest of the group gathered behind to follow.
Not tonight. Not tonight.
I didn't want to talk about anything right then. This trip had really taken the wind out of me, and I had too much to think about already. Things would have to be discussed eventually. The files I found at the old lab, the words spoken to me by Amon, but that could wait till we were safe and sound back in New Orleans, my hometown. That's all for tonight's episode. If you'd like to support the archives, you can do so by visiting our Buy Me a Coffee at buymeacoffee.com/inkdrinkerarchives. If you're into witchy apothecary goodies, you can support us by purchasing some wares from our shop, inkdrinkerapothecary.storeenvy.com. From loose-leaf teas to delightful perfume oils and mystery goods like our blind date with the book boxes, there is pretty much something for every strange and unusual creature out there. You can also find the archives on most social media platforms at Ink Drinker Archives or the Occult Archives with author E.M. Moon on Facebook. As always, I'll leave you with this reminder. Lock your doors, salt your windows, and remember, it's okay to sleep with the lights on.